Good evening and welcome at this Tabernacle talk that we have. We want to take all the different subjects from the Tabernacle and we want to spend some time around it. Now, tonight is the first of these sessions that we will have about the Tabernacle. And so I want to read to you from Exodus chapter 25. It says, "And the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, that they bring me an offering. Of every man that gives it willingly with his heart, you shall take my offering." Now, the first aspect that we read about the tabernacle, the very basic thing about the tabernacle is the offering. It doesn't say bring a sacrifice. It says bring an offering. Now, in the Bible, the word offering that is used here from the Hebrew is the word Terumah. The word Terumah. So God instructs the children of Israel to bring a Terumah, a free will offering from the heart, to build the tabernacle. And the very reason why the tabernacle is built, we see here in chapter 25 verse 8, where Moses then says, or God says to Moses, "And let them make me a sanctuary, that I may dwell among them." So the very basic idea about the tabernacle, you cannot understand the tabernacle. And the reason for the tabernacle to even be there, to exist, and consequently the temple, and consequently us as a temple, you cannot understand it unless you understand this basic principle that it is that God wants to dwell with man. That is the most important thing. In anything that you believe about the tabernacle, in anything you want to say, in how you want to discern things, how you want to interpret things, this must be foremost in your mind. That the tabernacle is about God dwelling with us. Now, it's actually a bit strange that when God starts with the tabernacle, He doesn't start by describing the things in the tabernacle, by giving us details about that. No, He starts with a terumah, with an offering. It makes me think of that portion that we read in the New Testament of Cornelius, who's not a Jew. Remember this, he's not a Jew. He's a Gentile. He is of the Italian people, and in other words, he's a Roman. He's actually of the people who's oppressing them, or supposedly oppressing the people of Israel at that very point in time. And then we read something, it says that the alms, the money, the offerings that this man gave came before God. And it opened up the whole idea of God calling Peter and saying to Peter, "Peter, I want you to go there." And it's the beginning of spreading the gospel to the nations, to the Goyim, to the Gentiles. And the thing that sparked it off was money. Money given from a heart that is right before God. And you know, so many times we treat money or the things we give as something less sacred, as something that's less important. You know, when people have meetings and they want to take up an offering, it's like, oh, let's just do this part of the service which is not so holy. It's about money. Let's get that over and done with so that we can get into the real spiritual things. And so let's just read this again. It says, "Speak to the children of Israel," this is verse 2 of Exodus chapter 25, "that they bring me an offering. Of every man that gives it willingly with his heart shall you take my offering." In other words, this is something that comes from the heart. This is an offering that is related to righteousness. Because if something comes from your heart, it comes from a conviction of what you should do. And the word in Hebrew for faith, which is the word emunah, and in Greek is the word pistis, and both of them actually means something that comes from a conviction. Something that's done from a conviction. Something that has to do with my heart. That has to do with how I perceive things from my heart. So we're going to speak about the Terumah again next week when we have this webcast. But we also need to remember that there were two other Terumah events that they were also told to do. And the one was during the Passover time, when they had to wave the first sheaf, but we'll speak about that. And the second one was also during the great day of the Feast of Weeks, or Shavuot, when they also had to bring, first they had to bring the seed, terumah, during Passover time, or the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and then they had to bring another terumah, which was the fruit terumah, which was then on the day of Shavuot, or in that festival. But we'll get to that next week. I'm not going to be dealing with that right now. We'll deal with that next week. I first just want to deal with something here. Just this one thought. I want you to really capture this. When God says, I want to dwell with you, then he says, I want to dwell with you based on what is in your heart. It's based on a conviction of my heart, a conviction where I will say, this is what God told me. And then I'm going to act upon that conviction. And if you go and read Luke chapter 16, you will see that where it's spoken about this unrighteous manager who spends the money of his master in the wrong way. And the master then says, look, I'm going to take your whole management away from you. Then the application of that is that if you are not trustworthy with money, with mammon, then you can also not be trustworthy with the spiritual things. So what God is saying is the first place, the place where he starts to have us have a heart that can receive him, that he can dwell with us, is in our giving. It's in money. It's in our things. It is in the tangible things that we have, our possessions. And if you cannot serve God from your heart with your possessions, and I'm not saying, that people need to manipulate you and then draw the money out of your wallet and afterwards you walk out of you and you think, why did I just give all that money? And it's all along because somebody manipulated you. No, it must come from an inner absolute conviction that what I give, I'm giving because God instructed me. And then it's not, when the people are not doing what I don't want them to do, I'm going to stop giving. No, then I give in spite of. Because it's not about giving to them. It's about me creating a platform of righteousness in my life. Am I saying that you can become righteous by what you're giving? No. Listen. The righteousness comes from your heart. But all righteousness must be revealed in deeds. And the most easy thing for you and me to practice this righteousness with is our possessions. When God speaks to you, he says, give, and you do, it's not the money that brings the righteousness, it's the obedience to his word. The obedience. Therefore, the Old Testament says, give unto righteousness, or sow unto righteousness, and receive or reap by grace. By the grace of God, we receive. But his grace is revealed to us because of our obedience to him. People have somehow diluted the truth when they asked Yeshua, what is the biggest commandment? then everybody always says, oh, he said to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your might, with all your mind, with all your soul, all your strength, with everything that's within you. And no, that's not just what he said. If you go and read Mark, the account in Mark, he actually says, when they asked him what is the greatest commandment, he said, this is the greatest commandment. Shema Yisrael. Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Listen and do, O Israel. Listen and do. And by listening and doing, I'm showing my heart, my willingness. And this is what it is saying here. It says, speak to the children of Israel that they bring me a terumah of every man that gives it willingly with his heart. When you have a conviction about something, there's also a willingness for it. It's when I don't have a conviction that I'm doing things unwillingly. So it's so important that we will be in the place where we will have conviction, that we will be a people of conviction, not just a people of convenience. Oh, I'm giving because it's convenient. No, I'm giving because this is a conviction. I'm doing what God is saying because this is my conviction. And I don't change my conviction because God said so. It's not how people react to me. It's not, so many times have I heard that people said, I gave something to somebody, they didn't say thank you, I will not give them something again. Then I say, well, I wonder, was this God telling you? Does God have to thank you? Or the people? Yeah, it's good manners to say thank you. But I'm not giving because somebody is treating me right afterwards. I'm not giving because that person is now praising me. No, I'm giving because God is saying so. And God says this is the beginning. This is where he starts dwelling with us. And until we understand what it is to do this terumah, this offering thing, this where I become obedient to what God tells me with my money, with my things, until such time, I have difficulty to also experience God's presence in my life. So, do we want to experience God's presence in our lives? Well, I believe then we need to become obedient in what is least. Some people want to be obedient in what is most, the spiritual gifts, all of these wonderful things. And God's saying, no, if I can't trust you with money, how should I trust you with the spiritual things? That's what Luke chapter 16 says. If you're not trustworthy with mammon, how can God trust you with the spiritual things? So God wants to come and dwell with me. And he wants to live through me. Colossians 1 verse 26 says that the secret, the mystery that's been hidden from all the ages has now been revealed to us, which is the Messiah in us, the hope of glory. Some of the other translations actually says the Messiah among us, the hope of glory. So is it in or is it among? When you go and read the Greek, it's actually in and among. So the one that came to dwell inside of me also wants to live his life through me. And God says that dwelling with me comes through obedience, through a willing heart. And the thing in which God tests our willing heart is normally with money. That's where he starts. Because it's so easy. It's stuff you can take in your hands. It's stuff you can touch and see. But it's also the stuff that most of us use as our security. And what we're actually saying is, God, I'm not going to put my security in the money. I'm going to put my security in you. And by giving the money away, I'm saying I will be more obedient to God and to what he will say, because in the end, I cannot trust in my bank account. I cannot trust in my job. I cannot trust in my business. I cannot trust in what I possess. I can only trust in the presence of God that is revealed in and through my life. And tonight, this is so important, that we get to that place where we will say, I will not put my trust in that which I can see in my hands, that which will buy me that which I want. No, I need to build a dwelling place for God. And then God says, well, you want me to dwell among you? Well, let me see who you will trust. Are you going to trust your money? Are you going to trust your possessions? Are you going to trust your job? Are you going to trust your abilities, your skills, what you have? Which, by the way, is just the grace of God that you have it. So let's just understand that also. It's just the grace of God. There's nothing that I can tonight show that I have that I can say, it's my doing. No, it's the grace of God. But then that grace of God in my life, in your life, has to be revealed through how we are willing to shema, listen and do. When God comes and reveals something to you, it becomes part of your heart. It becomes part of who you are. And you start living from that conviction. And then it's not difficult when God says, give. When he says, bring an offering, bring this terumah. Because I know that he will always take care of me. Always. And then God's not testing my capabilities of operating without that which I've just given away. No, what he's doing is he's testing my faith, my conviction that he is the one that can always, always, always provide for us. I want to come tonight and I want to encourage you. I want to encourage you with this, that he is the one that gives us the strength to obtain wealth. And so my security doesn't lie in my wealth. My security doesn't lie in my capabilities. No. In my heart, there must be a conviction. A conviction in which I will say, it's the grace of God that I have these things. Because I have reaped by grace. But it will build righteousness before God when I walk in faith, obeying his voice. And the place where God starts, it's our money. That's where he starts. And unless you have got a willingness in what you possess, in the money you have, in your wealth, to give that as God tells you, why would you then be willing in the other things? Why would you then, when God comes and gives you spiritual gifts to pray for the sick, not then walk into a proudness? See, God says the place where he starts with us to build a dwelling place in our lives, a mishkan, a tabernacle, is in our willingness of heart to obey him in that which we can touch, in our money. I want to bless you tonight. I want to bless you with all of the goodness of God, all of his prosperity, to just come upon you, to overcome you, to fill your storehouses. But more than that, I want to come and bless you tonight, to have a willing heart, to be obedient to everything that God will tell you. That we will never, ever, ever, ever put our security in anything else than in what God says. Next week, we're going to continue with this subject on the Terumah. And we will look at what it means, because it's the first fruit offering. But we'll see you next week again. God bless you.